welcome to the Dead Drop Podcast. I am your host, Jon F. Merz. Episode 30. Got 30 of these things in the can. Unbelievable. Too funny. And for the record, I don't know why the camera makes me keep looking redder than I am, and now I'm slightly orange. So, at some point, I'm going to have to get this production aspect of it figured out, but you guys will hang with me anyway. So today's episode is all about my first feature film experience. Yay. Awesome. So cool. I did not do an episode last week deliberately because I just wanted this to be just the slam bang of podcast episodes talking about my work on Mother Android, the feature film I have been talking about for, ever since I booked the role, which was back in September on the 8th, my wife's birthday. So let's get into it because we got a lot to cover. So buckle up. So anyway, as you all know, if you've been listening to this podcast, I did book this role. I auditioned for 2 roles initially back in August. I received notes from the director on one of the roles, which I then redid the audition. And when we went down to Cape Cod to celebrate my wife's birthday on the 8th, I received the email saying that the movie would like to offer me the role of Mr. Olson. And Mr. Olson, in this case, is Chloe Grace Moretz's father. So I get to be the dad of the star of the movie, which is not a bad thing at all. I'm just going to snooch a little closer to the microphone here so you can hear me better. Which I thought was really, really pretty cool. So, let's see. I'm just glancing at a blog entry that I sort of wrote a debrief on. Oh, yes. Okay. So basically where we left off before on the last episode, I was kind of waiting to hear from the production about, what was going to be entailed moving forward. First thing I heard was from the second assistant director, excuse me, a girl named Alyssa, who was awesome to deal with, about COVID testing. So feature films, TV shows, everything these days is super safe. And by super safe, I mean they literally do not take chances on anything. So because this is a SAG-AFTRA project, there are all these safety guidelines that have to be adhered to. And basically that meant that I was going to be tested for COVID a number of times. Even though I only had one day on set, I had to go to base camp, to the production office, one of the times on set. So every time I did that, leading up to my shoot date, I had to get a COVID test. So I had a grand total of 4 COVID tests over the space of 1 week. Needless to say, they all came back negative, which was great. So, but just as an example of something else that they put into place for this production, you had a daily health questionnaire that you had to fill out and submit online. Just 10 questions asking about how you were feeling, whether you had any symptoms, whether you had a headache, whether you had body fatigue, this, that, and the other thing. Excuse me. And at the conclusion of that, when you press submit, they would send you an email called SafePass, and the SafePass had a little QR code on it. And anytime that you needed to get access to the production office, base camp, or the set, you first had to check in and show that you had this QR code at the table or front desk, wherever you happen to be going. They would scan that code, and then they would take your forehead temperature. And then, and only then, were you allowed to sort of proceed with whatever business you had for that day. So, I mean, even before you got to take the actual COVID test, you still had to do all this other stuff. So I went on, the Friday that it snowed around here, which was obviously 2 weeks ago, was my first COVID test, and it took me about an hour to get up to where the production office was, north of Boston, because they were filming literally all over the place. Had my first test. It was kind of nice when I walked in, and gave my last name, and the woman looked up and she said, "Oh, John." Sort of like, I don't know you, but it's nice that you know my name. That's kind of cool. But everybody involved in this production from start to finish, didn't matter what position they had on the crew or the cast, they were just awesome to deal with. I mean, it was just such a great freaking time. It's just not even funny. Anyway, my first test results came back negative. But then on Sunday, I get an email from production stating that a cast member was experiencing symptoms related to COVID, and that they were going to get another test. And the doctor that was on the production was going to check them over, sort of bring them in and make sure that they were okay, and this, that, and the other thing. But because of that, the Monday after my first test, which was when I was originally scheduled to have my fitting, was like everything was canceled. Production just shut down. No ifs, ands, or buts. The only thing that you were allowed to do on that Monday was go for another COVID test, which is exactly what I did. I drove up to the same place I got it on Friday and got another COVID test. And then we found out that the cast member actually did not have COVID, which was a huge relief. So then Tuesday rolled around and everything was right back on track. My fitting was bumped to Tuesday. So I drove up to the base camp, which was in Newton, because they were going to be filming some of the scenes in Newton. So I rolled up there, had my fitting with Clarissa, who was awesome. She had a bunch of outfits for me to try on. And we settled on one, and that was that. I met another cast member, the guy who plays the family android, so to speak, a guy named Steve. Awesome dude. We kept bumping into each other at COVID tests, so it's sort of funny. But he was a super nice guy, huge amounts of experience. He's been in theater down in Rhode Island for over 20 years. So definitely a seasoned actor, and just a great guy as well. Just a lot of fun to talk to. So that was Tuesday. That was election day. So in amongst getting my fitting done, I was also anxious to head back home and see the election results. That was a sleepless night. But regardless, it's over now, thank God. So let's see, Wednesday night, the day after that, I had to go for yet another COVID test. So I drove up to, this time we were in Newton again, but this time I drove to the set because the timing worked out better. They were going to have COVID testing on the set, and then they were going to have COVID testing at the base camp, which are two different things. Usually, a lot of times, if you don't know, productions will have sort of a base camp where they set up like trailers, hair and makeup, costumes, and then they'll have either buses or minivans that will sort of take you where you need to go to the actual set. Especially if you're filming in a neighborhood, you can't necessarily just have this huge footprint, sit down and take up space and streets within a neighborhood. So what they'll do is they'll look for base camp in Newton was at an American Legion, someplace that has a big parking lot so they can bring tractor trailers in there and stuff like that. Otherwise, they'll look for a church, which was where base camp was on the night of my shoot. And just stuff like that. Somewhere where they can just sort of squat and have a presence and then deliver you back and forth to the set. So Wednesday night, so I was going to the actual set on Wednesday night, which the start of the movie, I can tell you this, takes place around Christmas. So even though this was November 4th at this point, they had the house that they were shooting in all decked out for Christmas. It looked amazing. I was only outside. I didn't get to go inside on the actual set itself, but we were in the yard set up where the COVID testing was. And it wasn't a bad way to kind of get into the Christmas spirit, especially given how 2020 is going. But so that was cool. I was only there for about 15 minutes, then hopped back in the car and came back home. Friday finally dawned. I got my updated call time was going to be 7 p.m. And again, Alyssa, the second assistant director, told me it was probably going to be a pretty long night of shooting. So throughout the day, I started trying to, take little naps here and there, try to bank some sleep. Stuff I've done in the past when I knew I was going to be, needing to operate at night. It's, sort of like, let me sleep during the day and try to get as much rest in ahead of time, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, I was just too damned excited to really sleep all that much. And frankly, I was a little bit nervous. It's been a while since I've been in front of a camera for dramatic purposes. I've done commercials since The Cars That Made America and stuff like that. But this is a feature film. It's sort of like, whoa, it's the big leagues kind of thing. And because it is Miramax, because it is a feature film, you don't want to screw up. So the excitement was more than the nervousness. I had my lines. I knew the entire scene back to front, front to back. So it was just a matter of executing on that. Let's see. The set was located in Winchester that night, which is, a fair hike from my house. I left my house at about 5:15 and got up there despite the fact that traffic was absolutely horrible. I got up there for about 6:30, checked in at the base camp, which, like I said before, was located in the parking lot of a church. And basically the woman there, she was like, well, we're not quite ready for you, so why don't you just hang out in your car for a little bit. So I said, cool, no problem. And went back to my car and waited until 7 o'clock rolled around. Let's take a quick break. I'll be right back. The other thing I forgot to mention with regards to COVID-19 protocols, any sort of homemade mask or surgical mask was not allowed. They had nothing but N95, so they had the good stuff. That's what everybody had to wear on set, no exceptions. So when I checked in at 7 o'clock finally to get going, they handed me like a little Ziploc bag that had a couple of N95 masks in it, which was great because now I brought those home. So I have a couple of N95s now, which is actually pretty cool. So I checked in, showed my QR code, COVID questionnaire, this, that, and the other thing. And they directed me to meet a girl named Melissa, who was, I don't know what her official standing was on the production. She may have been a production assistant. I don't know. I get the impression that she was a little bit higher up than that. But she was in charge of sort of wrangling me, my wife, a phenomenal actress named Tamara Handry, and our android, the actor named Steve that I told you about before. So she brought me over to my trailer, which had Mr. Olson on the outside. Where, I was initially like, oh man, sweet, I get a trailer. This is awesome. I can't believe this. The trailer was, it was sort of a cube. It was about 8 feet long by about 4 feet wide. It had a toilet and a bench to sit down and all my wardrobe. But even still, the fact that I had a place in some tractor trailer that had been converted to movie trailers was pretty amazing. So I took a number of pictures that I've posted on social media, and if you're subscribed to my newsletter, I'll include those as well so you can see. But I get changed, and neither my wife nor Steve, the android, were there yet. So Melissa took me over to get my hair done, and the hair and makeup trailer was actually pretty small as well. But I walked in, and out of the corner of my eye, I can see the star of the movie, Chloe Grace Moretz, sitting in the makeup chair having a nice animated conversation with the makeup person. So I sat down, right next to her. Didn't break into her conversation because, I was talking to the hair guy and this, that, and the other thing. But he basically took a look at me and cleaned up my neck a little bit and said, okay, you're good to go. So I thought that was pretty sweet. Chloe, my first impression of her was that she was just super nice to everybody, which is always a great thing. You don't necessarily really want to work with divas, but, sometimes that's how it happens. Let's see. Oh yeah, when I walked into my trailer, sorry, I'm just looking over here at my notes because there's so much stuff. I have to prompt myself from time to time. When I walked into my trailer, there were a couple of bottles of water, and then there was this laying on the bench. So I opened it up, and I can pull it out here. It's the card. First of all, if you notice, my name is spelled correctly. Holy crap. Yeah, it's a big deal. When you go through life having everybody and their mother stick an H into your name when there is no H, and no, it's not short for Jonathan, and somebody actually takes the time to spell it correctly, whew, that's nice. Anyway, this is the thank you card from the director, Mattson Tomlin, which I was just over the moon about. I thought that is just awesome. Super cool. And he spelled my name right twice, not just once, but twice. So, anyway. Yep, so I went over, got my hair done. And so I walked back to my trailer at that point and sat on the steps. Last Friday, unlike the Friday before it where I had my first COVID test, was super warm. In fact, it's still way too warm around here for the middle of November. I don't know what's going on, but it's disgusting. It needs to be cooler. But last Friday was really warm, so I sat out on the steps of my trailer and just kind of watching the world go by, kind of thing. Just soaking in every aspect of being on a feature film set, which I have never been before. But that's when my wife showed up, Tamara, and she's also been acting for years. She had a great role in The Equalizer as a bookstore clerk. She's been on network TV tons and tons of times. She lives up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts here, so it's super nice. She came by, introduced herself, and then went off to her trailer. And then Steve actually was there as well, so we reconnected. And then Melissa came by and said that we were going to be taken to the set in order to do rehearsals, which I thought was kind of cool. So we the three of us piled onto an old yellow school bus, and it was funny. So we board the school bus, and there are little yellow stickers on, parts of the different seats, and the yellow stickers were the only places that you were allowed to sit, so that they maintained proper social distance and stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting. But we trundled out of the church parking lot, about 6-minute drive to get to the actual house that we were shooting in. And they had the neighborhood, it wasn't blocked off with a police presence, but there was definitely a police presence there, and they had some trucks. So the school bus had to drop us off about a block away from where we needed to be, just simply because she couldn't navigate the school bus into the tight confines of where the set actually was. So we walked over. We got stopped a couple of times, but Tamara was in the lead, and she's kind of an old hand at this stuff. So she just simply told the people that we were part of the cast, and they let us right through. And we're walking through this neighborhood, and I could see that some of the neighbors have pulled out lawn chairs and have coolers full of booze, and they're just sort of waiting on the lawn, hoping to get a look at some of the celebrities that might be in this movie. I don't know if they knew who was actually starring in it or what the case was. So I don't know if they were big Chloe Grace Moretz fans or what. But they were all out there looking for a peek. And the three of us, kind of go walking by, and nobody paid us any attention, which was cool. Let's see. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so once we got onto the actual set, there was a production assistant named Julia who was waiting for us. The house we were shooting in was one of these big old homes in Winchester. Winchester's a fairly old community mixed with some wealthy enclaves and so forth and so on. This house wasn't ostentatious and glitzy or any of that stuff, but it was a big sort of probably turn of the century house, turn of the 20th century I should say, not 21st. It had 3 floors, plenty of space. So she walked us in, She took us up to the attic, which was sort of our holding room. The attic had been converted into a kid's bedroom, but there were sheets all over everything. And it was interesting, too, again, going back to the COVID safety protocols. There were signs outside of every room saying maximum occupancy allowed. You couldn't, if there were more than 4 people, you couldn't be in there. Some rooms it was only 1 person, some rooms it was only 2 people. All depended on the size of the actual room itself and stuff like that. So we kind of settled down, Tamara, Steve, and I, and just started talking. And then finally, Julia, they were shooting while we were up there. They were shooting other scenes in the house. And Julia finally brought us downstairs to the living room, and the director, Matson Tomlin, came over for the first time and introduced himself. Super nice guy, 30 years old, so he's young, but he's one of these, he's going to be a superstar, mark my words, because he's got a great low-key directing style, very solid leadership, but it's just very comfortable. He makes the whole environment super, super comfortable, which was awesome. So he came over, introduced himself, and then Chloe Grace Moretz and Algie Smith both came over and introduced themselves, and these are the 2 stars of the movie, and they were super, super nice. Just no attitude whatsoever, just totally awesome people from start to finish. So Matson started walking us through sort of, the idea of what the scene entailed, and how, Algie's going to be coming down the stairs, and, I had a little bar cart for myself. I was going to be making myself a drink, which, if you know me, fits very nicely with my whole vibe in general. So he said, John, you're going to be over here making a drink. Tamara, you're going to be walking and having a conversation with Chloe, and this is how this is all going to unfold. I expected that there was going to be this just massive camera setup that was going on, along with a whole bunch of lights, because in my previous experience, granted it's not all that much, but that's more what I'm used to. There was an A camera, there was a B camera, there was a C camera on the set of the Cars That Made America. But this time there was one camera woman in a Steadicam rig with a camera package that was probably, 4 to 5 feet long. Once you started adding in all the lenses, all the battery packs, this, that, and the other thing. I asked her at one point that night, I said, how much does that thing actually weigh? And she said it's probably about 70 pounds. So even though, she's wearing this whole rig, this harness that helps her, sort of, it equalizes the weight of the entire assembly. In between takes, she would have to basically go over and rest this camera package on a stand just so her back didn't get completely destroyed by moving around and filming with this thing. But that was the only camera that was going to be used for, at least for the scene that I was in. So we finished up rehearsal, and Matson said, "Okay, I'm going to send you guys back to base camp." I was already done. I'd actually gone in for makeup before that. Shortly after I got my hair done and Chloe was done, Melissa brought me back in for makeup. So I was all set. I was ready to go, but I went back anyway. Because Tamara and Steve had not gotten wardrobe or hair and makeup done yet. So I just went back and I was hanging out on the trailer steps again. And Chloe, so where my trailer was, directly across here was Chloe's trailer, facing her door faced out towards me, and then here was Algie Smith's trailer, and his door faced out towards me. So I'm watching, and Chloe comes out of her trailer with a birthday cake and a balloon bouquet, and starts making her way over to Algie Smith's trailer because it was his birthday that night. I think he's turning 26 or something like that. So she knocked on his door, and she's got, like her hair and makeup people are around her and stuff like that. And Algie comes to the door, and they start singing happy birthday. And since I'm sitting there, I'm like, I can't just not participate. How rude would that be? So I got up and I, went over and started singing happy birthday to Algie as well. So that was actually pretty funny. let's see. Finally, it was time to go back to set. They were gonna film our scene, so we rode back, and we started. It's just I'm just trying to. This is about where I ended on my debrief. So from here on out, it's nothing but my memories coming back, and they're probably going to be disjointed as hell. But whatever. So we set up. They had the lights all ready to go. One of the prop guys came over to me with a whiskey glass because I was going to be pouring myself some whiskey, and they had a container of whiskey which was purified water mixed with caramel color. So he came over and kind of walked me through the process. He said, "You're going to put 3 ice cubes into the glass, and the ice cubes were actually glass cubes." And he said, "And then you're going to pour until it just gets over the top of the ice cubes, maybe a little less than that." And I said, "Okay, great, no problem." And we started shooting. They probably shot maybe a dozen takes in total, and at the conclusion of every shot, when we were done, when Mattson would call cut, I would have to take my glass that was full, or up to the point where the ice cubes were, hand it back to this poor prop guy, who would then run down the hall, rinse it all out, wipe it down, get the glass ice cubes ready to go again, and bring it back to me for the next take. So I felt bad, but that's continuity's sake. It's got to be fresh at the start of every single take, so that when they edit it and put it all together, they can, it's all seamless. Not, oh, wasn't this glass empty in the last take, but now it's full? You avoid all that weird stuff. So we started going through it and made adaptations on the fly. Mattson wanted things shot, differently. We did a whole bunch of different angles on it. And at one point, so they're supposed to be, without giving too much of the story away, Chloe Grace Moretz and Algie Smith are supposed to be leaving my house with where my wife and I are. And they're supposed to be getting into a car with their friends, and they're going to kind of go off and party a little bit. So they were heading from sort of the reception hall of this house down the steps and into the car. And they were shooting all that as well. So they would leave our scene and sort of bleed into the next scene. Well, at some point they finished with the friends. So the first assistant director called everybody outside, and this is something that happens. It's pretty standard when you are wrapped on a production. Usually, the first assistant director or the director himself will say something like, "All right, everybody, gather around. Let's give a big round of applause to so and so and so and so. They're wrapped. Great job. You guys did awesome. Blah blah blah. Thanks for being part of it. See you later." That kind of thing. So all of the friends in this nice cherry red Range Rover were wrapped. So we all went outside and said goodbye and this, that, and the other thing. So they hung out for a little bit, and they were getting pictures with Algie Smith and Chloe Grace Moretz. So now I'm thinking, maybe it is okay if I ask for a picture later. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see, this, that, and the other thing. We went back inside. We had to do a couple of different takes. What's most interesting to me about this film when it comes out is, because there are androids in it, I kind of expected it to have much more of a futuristic vibe, and it doesn't. It's basically, the whole aesthetic of the movie seems to be right now, but with androids. So my wardrobe was pretty standard, what I've worn before on a bunch of different sets for commercials, for print shoots, for stuff like that. I'm not gonna. All right, I will just say this: our android has an ugly Christmas sweater on, so it's pretty funny. Not the one that he wanted. They had some seriously, amazingly bad, ugly Christmas sweaters. Apparently, he had one where the reindeer was pooping on the back of the sweater. They didn't go with that one, unfortunately, because I think that would have been hysterical. But I think it's going to be pretty funny when the movie comes out and you see this android kind of moving around. He's got an ugly Christmas sweater on. Regardless, we shot probably for another hour or so after that, and then around about right around 1 o'clock, the first assistant director comes into the room. He's like, "All right, we're all going outside to look at the sky." So now I'm thinking, all right, we must be wrapped. We must be done. So we go out, we look at the sky, and he says, "All right, we want to give a big round of applause to John, Tamara, and Steve. They are wrapped on this movie." And then he said, "And also Algie Smith is wrapped on this movie." So Algie Smith was done with all of his scenes that night as well. And then plus it was his birthday, so everybody's standing around wishing him a happy birthday, blah blah blah. We hugged it out with Chloe. Just and the interesting thing, just to go back to when we were actually filming, in between takes, we're all joking around. It's really interesting. Like, they weren't hustled off in between takes to some trailer or anything like that. They were just super laid back, super casual, super cool. Chloe's been acting since she's like 6, so she's just, even though she's young, she's such an experienced, seasoned veteran at all this, that she just seems completely unfazed by anything, which is really cool. And Algie he's been doing this for a while. I became aware of him in the New Edition story. I thought he was amazing in that. His singing alone is just incredible. If you haven't heard "Can You Stand the Rain" from the New Edition story, that's all them, the actors, actually singing. It's not New Edition singing. So for them to be able to pull it off in such an amazing way, it's just testament to their skill and their talent. So we all hugged it out in the end, and then Algie kind of wandered over. He had a minivan that was going to take him back to base camp. He had a little bit of an entourage with him. There were like two people with him, plus his bulldog. And Chloe had her bulldog as well. And one of the funny side notes for that whole thing was during takes, Chloe was complaining about the fact that Algie's bulldog was apparently in heat and kept wanting to get it on with Chloe's bulldog. And Chloe was like, "My poor bulldog keeps looking at me like, help me," and I can't do anything because Algie's dog is in heat. And Algie's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just, is what it is." So that was sort of a running joke that night as well. But Chloe got in her minivan, Algie got in his minivan, and we went back. Oh yeah, we got in our own minivan. And here's the thing about the minivans on set. They, again, going back to the COVID protocols, they were all outfitted. Somebody had taken PVC pipe and just run it along everywhere, and they had these heavy plastic curtains, like maybe you'd see it in a butcher freezer area, the kind of that hang down, and they're just heavy, and they separate areas where the freezer is and this, that, and the other. Well, that's what was hanging in this car. And I already said it was warm that night. It was, so riding back in the minivan, it was pretty stifling. I was like, ugh. But it was safe, so that's cool. So we drove back to base camp. We get to base camp. I see Algie. He's outside with a nice bottle of champagne because he's done on the movie. He's wrapped, plus it's his birthday. And Chloe's right there, and their dogs are right there. And I said, "The hell with it, I'm just going to go for it." So I got out, and I initially wanted a video. I was going to ask him if he could just look at the video and say, "Joyce, can you stand the rain?" Because Joyce is a huge fan of his. She loves that movie. And I just thought that'd be like the coolest thing to get for her. But my phone, because I'm trying to work it as I'm walking, it wasn't doing the right thing. So I settled for a couple of pictures. Said, "Algie, can I get a picture with you?" He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, man, no problem." So he posed for a couple of pictures, and then I went to Chloe and did the same thing. "Can I get a couple of pictures?" And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Thanked them both, incredibly much for being able to work with them. I thought it was amazing. This was the director's first movie. This is the first movie that he has directed. So this was also my first movie that I got to be in. So it was kind of sort of an interesting sort of, I don't know what you want to call it. You can call it whatever you want. It's not destiny, but it's just kind of an interesting coincidence sort of thing. So I'm super, super excited about, what's to come. I cannot wait to see how this progresses at this point. You guys know that as a writer, I get super excited when I see cover art from my books. I'm just super visually centric. So I'm going to freak out, flip out when I see the first poster for this movie actually come out. I'm going to get it framed. I'm going to get my copy of the script. I'm going to put that in the frame. I'm going to put the first page of my SAG contract there. I'm going to put a picture of, Chloe and Algie, and it's just going to go on my office wall as, just one of those waypoints, one of those achievements that you can look back on in later years and say, hey, that's something cool I did. That's pretty much it. I left base camp probably a little bit after 1 a.m. in the morning. There was nobody on the roads. I was home by 1:40. My wife had warmed up a little bit of pizza for me, which was great because I hadn't had anything all night. Not that I wasn't starving or anything. I ate before I got there, and I was just so keyed up. I don't think eating on set would have been a good thing anyway. But I had a couple of slices of pizza, made myself a couple of celebratory cocktails. Because why not, right? That's what you do. When you put the hard work in, reward yourself and say, good job, Merz. Not a bad night at all. And that's it. That's pretty much it. I sent a thank you email to the director a couple of days later. So I filmed on Friday. Monday was the last day of filming for Chloe and for the movie. So I did not send my thank you email until late Monday, early Tuesday, somewhere around there, because I just didn't want the email coming in and bothering Mattson while he was still trying to get principal photography done on a film. But I did send that, thanked him again profusely for the experience, and wished him all the best. And that's it, people. That's, now, I'm attached to the movie on IMDb. It's got my name and it's got my role in it, which is great. Now the big question is, am I on camera? Am I in focus? Do you see me when I'm delivering my lines? Who knows? This is I have no way of knowing. I have no way of knowing what it's going to look like when it comes out. But I think it's going to be a pretty cool movie. I read the script, the entire screenplay. I liked it, and I can't wait to see what happens next. It's crazy life, right? But cool things happen when you take risks and dare to go after what you want to achieve. I never would have thought in 2014 when I started modeling that I would be in a feature film someday, but here I am. So on that note, we are going to close this episode of Dead Drop. Not much to report on the writing front. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I am starting edits on Raider X, and I am also back to work on Stringer. So a bunch of stuff will get back on track probably next week, although I've got a job I'm doing next week with my wife, which is really nice. And a bunch of other stuff is coming up as well, so that may mess with my schedule a fair amount. We'll see. We got the holidays coming up. Things are a bit in flux right now, but just bear with me. We'll get stuff out eventually, and I'll keep doing these podcasts to let you guys know what's going on. In the meantime, the weekend is almost upon us, so you all have a great one, and I will see you next week for more Dead Drop. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.